I find out I'm not the father of my 14-year-old son, and my wife wants to have a happy family with the biological father. But in court, my son talks, and my wife is desperate. This is a bit of an emergency. So I'll get straight to the point. I'm 40 years old and had been married to my soon-to-be ex-wife, Megan, aged 38, for almost 12 years. We have a 14-year-old son together, Johnny. Or at least I thought he was my son all these years. Megan and I met at work, and we had only been together for a year when she found out she was pregnant. I was a bit skeptical about having a baby so soon in our relationship, but she wanted to go ahead with the pregnancy. So I decided to support her, and we moved in together after we found out about the pregnancy when Johnny was born. It didn't even occur to me to do a paternity test because Megan and I were in love, and I was sure that Johnny was my son. I felt very connected to him, and he even looked like me because we both had dark hair and eyes. So I literally had no reason to suspect anything. However, a few months ago, I found out that he is actually not my biological son, and Megan had been cheating on me all this time about 3 months ago. She confessed to me that she had been having an affair with her high school crush Nan. For the past months, even at the beginning of our relationship, she had been having an affair with him while we were together, and she had never told me about it because she later got pregnant. One of the main reasons she and Nathan had to split up after high school was because he was not very serious about his life and had decided not to go to college. Back then, he was still living with his parents and jumping from job to job every couple of months. She thought he needed stability in his life. So she chose to be with me, because I was very career-oriented. She said if she decided to stay with me, she would be betting on the right horse. But now she had realized that money wasn't everything and she was in love with Nayan, so she wanted to build a life with him. Plus, he had had enough time to change, and now owned his own business. So she really didn't have to worry about money. When she confessed everything to me, she told me that she had taken a paternity test and knew that Johnny wasn't my son from the start, but she chose to keep quiet because I seemed very happy to be a father, and she didn't want to ruin our relationship. Talking about her past, she also made Nan promise that she would never mention this affair they had, because she didn't want to risk our relationship, and for her happiness, he stayed away. However, they met again at a high school reunion, almost months before he finally told me the truth, and rekindled their relationship once again, as he was well established, and he was still in love with her, and she realized she was still in love with him too. He had to leave. It was a horrible moment for me, because I had been with this woman for so long. I had built a life with her, and yet they were doing this to me, like I meant nothing to her anyway after telling me the truth. She left the house with all her stuff, but Johnny continued to live with me, because he didn't want to go with her. He hadn't even consulted me before telling him the truth, and he already knew everything before I got home from work. So we both ended up consoling myself that I had shared custody of Johnny, because regardless of his biological parentage, he was my son. I had completely raised him, and no one could take that away from me. Not even Nathan. Megan. I spoke to my lawyer and filed for divorce hours after finding out the truth, and the terms of my divorce filing were pretty simple and fair. I would keep everything what we had, and she should not expect alimony, even though she had been a housewife for the past 14 years since she left her job after Johnny was born. Despite all my support, she had cheated on me. She had already been using me for money all the years we were together, and I was not going to allow that to continue any longer. Of course, she did not agree with that, and challenged the terms of the divorce, demanding alimony and a large amount of compensation. I was ready to fight for that. I did not care, but she made things worse by filing for full custody 3 weeks ago, because apparently she and Nathan were planning to move to another city to open a branch of their business there too, and they wanted to take Johnny with them. They would give me visitation rights, but she was demanding full custody because now things were working out, so they could be a happy family with Nan. Just because it was convenient for her, there was no way she would allow that to happen, and since we couldn't resolve it in mediation, this matter ended up going to family court. I was fed up. I was sure this would be a piece of cake for me. But she and Nathan started lying through their teeth about what kind of person I was. I had to work really hard to prove them wrong, which has made everything complicated even though Johnny himself has said that he would like to stay here with me since he grew up here. They are doing everything they can to make it seem like Johnny is confused, and that I am the one manipulating him. They think that I am too much of a workaholic to be able to take care of him by myself, and that it would be better for him to live with his mother. Also, there is the fact that I am not actually his biological father, which makes everything take twice as long to sort out since divorce proceedings began and Megan moved out. We came to an informal agreement on how we were going to share time with Johnny. Until now we had an agreement where he would spend the first 4 days of the week with Nathan and Megan, and he would come with me on the weekends. I thought that this would be the agreement that we would stick to even after the divorce. But they made it much more complicated than necessary by deciding to move to another city and file for full custody out of the blue. So we have been stuck in a custody battle for the past few weeks when we were in court family. The other day, Johnny said something that caused quite a stir. This was the first time he was actively involved in the court proceedings, and at one point he said that up until now, he had wanted to stay here with me, and that he was still going to stand by that decision, not only because his life was here, but also because he'd heard Megan and Nan talking on the phone with their lawyer. The night before, he had heard them discussing how to portray me as the villain, and they had made up a bunch of lies that he started mentioning much worse than the ones they had made up before this. They had only claimed that I was too much of a workaholic and didn't have enough time for Johnny, that I brought work home with me, and that most of the time I was home, I locked myself in my room and was always busy with work stuff, even on weekends. They also claimed that I almost never cared about how Johnny was doing in school, and that I had not attended a single parent-teacher meeting since he was born, leaving all that in the hands of my wife, because I found him boring, and I never showed interest in his life. These things were easy to deny, but apparently Joho had not even heard that they were going to escalate the accusations and really make it seem like I abused him, saying that I hit him and yelled at him for the slightest mistake. Apparently, I was not even afraid to talk about it in court in front of me, and maybe that way they could get temporary protective custody of him and eventually get influence against him, which would make things easier for them. That is why he wanted to go ahead and clarify for himself that I had never abused him, and that if anything, it was Megan and Nathan who were mistreating him by involving him in this battle for his custody and using him as a pawn just to get back at me for my divorce, leaving Megan with absolutely nothing. Even though my request was fair, as she had never earned anything for herself, and had had the audacity to cheat on me, despite depending heavily on me, she thought she deserved the alimony and compensation she was demanding, and planned to use Johnny's custody as leverage against me to reach a settlement in the divorce over the phone. She had heard Megan say that once they had the divorce money, she would invest in the Nathan business and take it to new heights. They had been practically overflowing with joy as they discussed this, so volume had probably been the last thing on their mind. Unfortunately, they forgot to consider the fact that at that time Johnny was with them and had not yet. So they had been pretty loud, and he was standing right outside the door and he had heard it all, after Johnny exposed Megan and Nathan. No one knew what to do, and the meeting had to be called off because our lawyers got a little loud, and we ended up having to leave early. I was pretty happy because after Johnny spoke, I turned to look at Megan, and she literally had her head in her hands and was grabbing her hair so hard I thought she would rip it out. This just meant that all this was true, and she was in trouble. I was happy with how the situation had turned out, and instead of going home with Megan, Johnny decided to come over to me, and we drove home together, but Megan was furious. She stopped us just as we were about to get in our car. She grabbed Johnny by the arm and started shaking him, demanding an explanation of why he had done such a thing in court and ruined his chances of living with her and Nathan. QI walked over to her, shaking him. I lost my patience. I walked over to her, I got between them and pushed her back so she couldn't touch him. Luckily, my lawyer caught all that on camera, and we will definitely use it in our next session. I told her to get out of the way, and told her it was her own fault for being a despicable person. I was glad that Johnny had taken my side, because I wasn't a spoiled, greedy, spineless monster like she already. I was pretty angry at the way she was treating Johnny, especially after what I found out in court. I was in no mood to let this continue. Nathan came to her rescue and started yelling at both of us about everything she had done for our family, and now we couldn't even let her have a real chance at being happy with him. I had no interest in talking to that guy, so I rolled my eyes and started to get in the car. But then Megan kept clinging to Johnny's arm and said that she was not going to allow him to come home with me because I was brainwashing him against his own mother. She told me that up until now she had only been fighting for full custody, to take Johnny with her and Nathan when they moved, but now she would make sure that he didn't even get visitation rights. Those were bold words from someone who had just been exposed as a liar, and who had planned to lie in court to get her dirty hands on money that he didn't deserve. I told her to let Johnny go, or she would call the police, and she said she was his mother and had the right to dictate where he went. Even Johnny kept trying to break free, but she held him very tightly and kept insisting that she wouldn't let him go home with me. At one point, things got a little heated. Johnny is quite strong and sturdy, although he is only 14. Megan, on the other hand, is small and not very strong, so Johnny did the only thing he could. He pushed her very hard to get free, get into the car and close the door. After it was pushed, she started screaming at the top of her lungs that I was encouraging her son to attack her and that I wasn't going to let this happen. I thought it was unfair to say that because he hadn't attacked her. He had just tried to break free in the process. She could have been pushed a little and would have fallen, but Nathan was there to catch her. So nothing serious happened, right? Well, apparently not, because she and Nian kept standing in front of our car saying that she would make sure that I would lose custody of him if I was encouraging him to be violent towards others, just because things weren't going the way I wanted them to. So I was definitely not fit to be a parent. It wasn't until I honked the horn for so long and the horn went silent that they finally pulled away and allowed us to go home. It's been a couple days since then, and I still wonder if it was the right thing to do. No reprimand Johnny for pushing his mother. He seems to be completely oblivious to it all. But I am in a dilemma now because that day he definitely pushed Megan very hard, and he is very strong. I do not want him to repeat this kind of behavior with anyone else, but under those circumstances I feel he was justified in doing what he did anyway. I am confused about whether Megan was right or not, because Yi has had issues with violence in the past. So I was the bad guy for not reprimanding my son for pushing his mother. Update 1. Some of you asked why I mentioned that Johnny has had issues with violence in the past. That is because a few months ago he was having bullying issues at school. He had not told us about it. But one day I received a phone call from the principal's office saying that Johnny had been in a fight and had gotten hurt. The boy he hit in the face got even more hurt. Apparently that boy had been bullying Johnny for several weeks. Johnny initially ignored him, but then the bully started going too far by insulting our family. Joni didn't like that. She told the boy to stop a couple of times, but when he didn't, and even tried to vandalize his locker with insults, Johnny just snapped and hit him, so there was a fight in the hallway. Obviously, I told Johnny that violence is never the answer because I don't want him to get into fights or get into trouble. But in a way, I felt proud of him for standing up for himself. I guess Johnny has never been violent unless the situation calls for it, and I think that's a good thing. Even in this situation with his mother, he was just trying to break free. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Megan misread the situation and is trying to use that against us, but I'm not going to doubt myself. It's been a week since the incident, and tomorrow we have to meet again. First, we're going to meet with our lawyers to settle the divorce, and then we will meet in the court or custody of Johnny after the revelation during our session. I highly doubt they have any chance. Tomorrow might be the day we can finally close this chapter and conclude what to do anyway. My lawyer and I have compiled all the evidence we could gather that I am a good father, and we are looking forward to winning this. Most importantly, Johnny's words will be the ones that count the most. He has made it very clear that he does not want to live with his mom. It's not just because he doesn't want to move. It's because she is a terrible person. Just like Nan. They will never be able to raise him. Right. And we definitely don't need another person like them. I was talking to Johnny a few hours ago, and he told me that he was very nervous because this will be the first time he sees his mother. After he pushed her to get free, he knew she was very upset about that, so he confessed to me that he is trying very hard not to worry about what she. But in the end, she is his biological mother. We have spent so many years together as a family. It's hard to accept the truth. Now he told me that he really feared what would happen if by some chance he ended up being given to Megan and Nan. Let's make sure. That seems to make him feel a little better, but I can tell the whole situation has affected him. I don't even know how I'm going to deal with the situation if I end up having custody of him. How we recover from that, because eventually his mother will leave town and move in with Nathan. I'm pretty sure after everything that's happened, she won't be willing to see Johnny again if she doesn't get custody of him. She's just that kind of person. I don't want him to lose his relationship with his mother because I don't want him to resent me in the future of. Anyway, we're leaving, and maybe tomorrow won't be the final day of this case. But for my sake, and Johnny's, we hope it really is. Update 2. Hi, something very strange just happened. It's almost 4 in the morning and I was asleep. But about an hour ago, someone rang the doorbell. When I went to open it, there was no one outside, just a brown envelope left on the door. I even checked the security cameras, but the person who left it was dressed all in black with the hood up. So, I couldn't identify her. However, she was taller than 160, so it couldn't have been Megan, and she seemed to be somewhat sturdy, or wearing a very bulky sweatshirt. Either way, I don't think it was Nathan either, and they are the only two possible options. What I found inside the brown envelope, I was very surprised, were the results of a paternity test. And surprisingly, they were positive. The results were from the same lab where we got tested a few months ago when Megan told me that Johnny was not biologically my son. She had shown me results that said that JNY and I were not compatible. I got tested 3 times just to make sure I was telling the truth, and all 3 times the results were the same. I had finally accepted the truth. But the results I just got say that JNY and I are compatible. So I'm so confused. I don't know which results are fake and which are real. To be honest, I was finding it really hard to believe that Yi wasn't my son, because we look so much alike, and I never felt like it wasn't my son whoever sent me these results. Is he trying to confuse me a day before we meet to decide custody? Or maybe there's something I've overlooked all this time. Maybe Megan and Nathan committed paternity fraud or something like that. I just called the lab, but obviously they didn't answer because they're probably not even open yet. However, the first thing I'm going to do tomorrow is go check personally, because this is really confusing and I have no idea what to do right now. However, I already talked to my ad about it, and we're going to come up with something tomorrow. First, we need to make sure these results are real. So I'm going to get tested again. But this time, I won't say anything to Megan about it. I don't know why, but I have a nagging feeling that I will definitely get answers tomorrow if I confront Megan with these results. Update 3. Today was a very long day. First, I went to the lab with Johnny and my lawyer to ask about the results I got last night before I could ask anyone about it. This guy who seemed to be in charge pulled us aside and told us it was him last night. He had handed me the envelope, but I didn't expect him to come. He explained to us that the first time we got tested, Megan and Nathan had already talked to him after researching and finding out what lab the court used. They had an agreement for him to change the results and show them as negative, so she could claim that JNY was not my son and try to take him. With her, apparently, she assumed that once she found out that Johnny was not my biological son, I would quit. I would be their father and leave them alone. However, when that didn't happen, after I saw the test results for the first time and went back for 2 more tests, she told this guy to help her and fake the results. 2 more times, this was all done behind our backs, and she promised him that she would eventually make him a business partner. Once she got the money from our agreement, he had expected that. So he helped her 2 other times by faking the paternity test results on each occasion. I was stunned when I found this out, because I never thought she would be capable of doing something like that anyway. He recently changed his mind because he had been in contact with Megan all this time and had heard what happened in family court the last time we met, as she had to tell him that these things were taking longer than she expected, and they would not be able to start their business for another couple of months. So he would have to wait. He decided that he could no longer help her because it was clearly very immoral and unethical. So he decided to give me that document last night. He apologized for all the trouble he caused, and he practically begged me not to involve him in any of this because he really wanted to remain anonymous. He was upset that this guy who didn't even know me had harmed me a few months ago, just for money, and I really wanted to report him. But that would only mean more trouble for me, and I didn't have the energy for that. Maybe if he repeats this type of behavior, someone else will do it. But until then, I'm out. Plus, I already had the documents I needed to prove my paternity. So I didn't care what happened to him if it came to that, and I had to prove something in court. I would definitely use it as evidence and report him. However, for now, I had another plan in mind. Afterwards, I went to court, but before we sat down for our meeting scheduled to come to a divorce settlement, I took Megan aside. She was quite shocked by that move. I told her that I had received this document last night, and that it was the actual results of the paternity test. so she understood right away that I knew about the fraud that I had committed. At first, she tried to act innocent, but I told her that paternity fraud is a serious thing, and that I would give her a chance to get out of this without any more trouble if she agreed to my terms of the petition this time, and also give up her parental rights over Johnny. She agreed to the first part, but the second part she didn't like. And she tried to negotiate with me, saying that she was his mother, and she couldn't just let him go. However, she didn't believe any of it. And I told her that no mother in the world would do something like that to her own child. So now she could do what I asked, or it would cause her a lot of trouble. After arguing with me for almost 10 minutes, she finally agreed. And I felt like I had won after that. I finally achieved, come to an agreement. And my lawyer and I were thrilled because she had agreed to the terms of the petition. After that, we just had to wait for our final confrontation in family court. And there things went exactly as planned. She wasn't happy about it, but she agreed to terminate her parental rights over Johnny. And leaving that took everyone by surprise, as I had been fighting tooth and nail for his custody for the past few weeks, and he had suddenly given up. So that seemed a little odd, but I didn't care. Johnny had won my lawyer and we finally parted ways and went to our respective homes a couple of hours ago. In a few days, my lawyer will have drawn up the papers and she will have finally given up her rights. Then it will just be me and my son against the world, although I think it has been like that for the past few months. But I just can't wait for all this to be officially over and finally try to move on with my life, because all this has been very intense. However, for now, Johnny is extremely happy with the situation, and so am I. So we are just trying to make the most of it. Update 4. It's been a little over 4.5 months since the last update, and I am now fully divorced and living with my son, something that has been extremely good for us because we have gotten rid of the toxicity of my ex-wife. Even Johnny is glad not to have to see her because in the late time he had started to resent what she did. Johnny turned 15 a short time ago, and although many people congratulated him and attended his birthday, his mother did not deign to even text him. That shows that she never loved him. Anyway, I did not reopen my account just to tell you that, but to update you on my ex-wife's situation, and also answer some questions. One that I saw you asked Anne a lot last time, and I left it unanswered. The vast majority had to do with taking legal action against the laboratory employee, and also against my ex. But as I already explained, and that's why I didn't answer, I was already tired of so many legal processes. I just wanted a quick way out of all that, and I took it. Some would have expected revenge and so on. But the truth is that being dragged through the court for months is not nice at all. So the best thing was to end it and go back to my normal life. Even for Johnny, who was also being affected by all this. In the end, I am a true believer that karma reaches everyone anyway. So sooner or later, my wife will receive her punishment, as will all those who did wrong with me. Although the update is also a bit about that, because some divine punishment, if you want, my ex has received. And it is that Nan finally decided to cut her off from everything. Because after they could not get money from me, which they would have been used to open a new store, he didn't want to share his business with her. It's quite poetic, because she didn't want to be with him when he was a nobody. And now he didn't want to be with her when he managed to establish himself. So now my ex-wife has had to find a job, something she wasn't very used to. She not only lost a husband and a son, but also her lifestyle. But that's what it is, when you do things wrong in life, at least in this case. And if you're wondering how I know, no, I haven't spoken to her again or anything like that. We only have people in common who could have told me all this. Luckily, she hasn't shown up at my doorstep, nor has she tried to contact us. And as some time has passed since this, I think she won't do it either.